Sports. We're joined by former Super Bowl champ Chris Canty. Chris.
Good morning, Jenna.
Good morning, brother.
Proudly wearing your Virginia colors.
Yeah, big win over Miami last week. See if the guys can double up and follow that up with another big win.
Have you been wearing that suit every day since?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Just
I wouldn't do
He was
that.
saving it for us.
No good reason to do that.
Well, just in case you want to keep them winning. You
no
know,
good reason
give
to do
them
that.
good
Touche, sir.
juju.
Let's keep this rolling.
Patriots taking on the Bears on Sunday. Tom Brady versus the guy looking to make Tom Brady look bad, Khalil Mack. The Pats are riding a 3-game win streak, but have yet to win on the road this season. And at last check, this game was on the road. One thing to note, Mack has missed the last 2 practices with an ankle injury, but is expected to play in this one. So, Canty, how does the Patriots offense match up with this Bears defense on Sunday?
Well, I think the Patriots offense as constituted matches up against any defense well. When you look at the weapons that Tom Brady now has, Julian Edelman and Josh Gordon to go along with Rob Gronkowski and all the other guys that he got in the backfield with Sony Michel and James White. I mean, this is a special offense, and that's why it took a little bit off for this offense to start to click, because you were missing some of those elements earlier in the season with the suspension, and then, you know, they didn't have anybody outside the numbers as a receiving threat other than Gronkowski. So it took a while for this offense to kind of pick up the pace. But what you've seen, what they've done in the last 3 weeks, being able to score 38 points in consecutive weeks, going up against the Miami Dolphins and the Indianapolis Colts, and then following that up with a 43-point performance last Sunday night against the Chiefs. I mean, this is a special offense. Now, they haven't seen anything like this defense this season other than the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think this is another one of those tests going up against a really talented group. But I feel confident in Tom Brady and those guys that they have in those Patriot uniforms going into Soldier Field.
Yeah, I think this is where we start to see, even though they've had the productivity and typically how they like to do things, they want to kill you by 1,000 paper cuts. You know, either throwing the ball to the flat. Sony Michel running the ball is a different version of this New England team that we haven't seen consistently the last couple years. They like moving the ball through the air, but I just believe now the explosive plays are going to start to come back. Josh Gordon's been there long enough. You could see in last week's game that was the most snaps that he had played combined. You could see he played over 60 snaps in the game. So to me, they're telling me he's more comfortable in the offense. They're more comfortable having him on the field. And going against this secondary, I look for Josh and Gronk to have big games. So I'm looking for the explosion in the passing game for them to rely on that. Now, you say, well, you're going to hold the football? Yeah, I believe they're going to have time. The ankle injury to Khalil Mack, he suffered it early in that Miami game. After that ankle injury, he has not practiced this week. He was not effective in that game. Now, he's a little undersized. He relies a lot on his speed and power. Now, you have an ankle injury. The field in Soldier Field is never a great surface. So I believe it's more of a mudding, thick surface. You understand what I'm talking about? That kind of Kentucky bluegrass, not that Bermuda.
It's a slow track.
Yes, it's a very, very slow track there in Green Bay. So
in Chicago.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
both
and
of
Green Bay.
Yeah, I know you don't travel around the league. Just giving a league-wide grass report. All right, the grass in that part of the country doesn't grow quite the same way as it does more down south. So I just believe it will affect him. I believe he will be neutralized, and the Smith, the rookie linebacker, watch him take advantage of his overall aggressiveness and him being a rookie.
Listen, if the Patriots don't turn the ball over, they should be able to win this game rather handily. That has been the key to the Bears defense. They had an early bye, so they've only played 5 games instead of the 6 most teams have played. They have forced 14 turnovers in those 5 games. So they're forcing almost 3 turnovers a game. 9 forced fumbles. So I know Khalil Mack's been a big part of that. He had a forced fumble the first 4 games of the year. But that means they've got 5 forced fumbles from players other than Khalil Mack. They've forced 10 interceptions of opposing quarterbacks, and quietly Brady is turning the ball over more this year than he typically does. He's thrown 6 interceptions. We saw the strip sack that happened in the Kansas City game. So you actually can win the turnover battle against New England. That's something I think they absolutely have to do. Mitch Trubisky was one of the few bright spots from the game this past weekend against Miami. He actually played well. It's one of the reasons why it was so odd to see Matt Nagy get so conservative in overtime when they had a chance to win that game. But this is a critical game for Chicago. Chicago knows they should be 4-1. New England, on the other hand, knows right now they can keep the pressure on Kansas City. And so for both of these teams coming into this game, recognizing what a loss does to their long-term hopes as far as getting a bye or winning their division.
But this is definitely a statement game for the Chicago Bears. This is a good opponent that if they can beat an opponent like this, they could say something. But how much of that is going to fall on Matt Nagy to get a little more aggressive, a little more creative than he has been, which have turned into losses the last couple of weeks for them?
Well, there's going to be some pressure on Matt Nagy to be creative because you know that Bill Belichick is going to take away some of the things that Mitch Trubisky is most comfortable with. He's going to force him to make the throws that are a little tougher. And so I look for that chess match to play out on the offensive side of the ball when the Bears have got the ball. But I'm looking at Vic Fangio and that defense and how much he can neutralize that passing attack of the New England Patriots. Now, we've seen the balance that they have being able to run the ball and throw the ball, but this team is a pass-oriented offense right now, as we've seen through the first 6 games of the season. So I'm looking to see if they can find a way to pressure Tom Brady without Khalil Mack being 100%. Because you mentioned it, CeCe, he had that ankle injury in the first half of the Miami Dolphins game. But since that point, the Miami Dolphins hung 24 on that Chicago Bears defense. And had it not been for a strip fumble by Akeem Hicks at the goal line, they would have lost that game in regulation. So, I mean, I'm looking at this and saying that Bears defense has got to find a way to keep this game close, because there's no way that Mitch Trubisky can get into a shootout like Pat Mahomes did with Tom Brady a week ago.
Well, I'm putting the responsibility on the head coach. I'm not going to blame Fangio on the defense. I'm not going to blame him. I'm blaming on Matt Nagy and that head coach. And the reason why, he's got a good quarterback who has a big-time arm. Now, is he going to develop into a quarterback, though? We know he's got a big arm, and he's a thrower, just like Josh Allen. But at some point, is he going to be an NFL quarterback? That responsibility is on Nagy. And also, Nagy had the blueprint. And that was what Andy Reid, his mentor, did last week. Now, is he going to trust his quarterback the way Andy Reid trusted his quarterback? Because Nagy runs the same system of what they're running in Kansas City.
All right, I'm glad you brought up Andy Reid, and then I want to ask you a question. In the last 5 years, 4 times a team has scored 40 points on the Patriots. 3 times Andy Reid coached Chiefs. 1 time Doug Peterson coached Eagles in the Super Bowl. Who's Doug Peterson part of whose coaching tree? Andy Reid. So Matt Nagy part of that tree. But you mentioned something that we've talked about a lot off the air that I want you to kind of elaborate on for the audience. The difference between being a guy that can throw the ball really well and a quarterback like that, because that you said it there, but you glossed over it. Explain what you're talking about there, because we know there are guys that can throw the ball really well that never turned into quarterbacks. We don't know which direction Trubisky's going to go. So explain what you're talking about.
Yes, and at some point you have to take that skill level and to be able to appropriate it to the game. And you want their skill level that you can start to actually see it, as you can start to see with Baker Mayfield. He is not just a thrower of the football. He's a quarterback, and it goes into how you're going to be a leader, how you're going to throw certain passes, and you can see it. Like ultimately, it's like the combine. Do you take that athlete and put him into the system in the NFL, and they can ultimately play? Whatever position they are they able to transfer that skill? And that's what we want to see with these quarterbacks. Ultimately, I want a quarterback. I don't want a guy who can just throw the football. I want a guy who's a born leader, a guy who can take a hit, a guy who can adjust his throws, and a guy who can play in multiple systems. That's what I mean when I'm talking about quarterbacking compared to just being a thrower of the football.
Nate Peterman. Stick around.
He's neither.
Chris,
none of
coming up to the Broncos.
No matter what you guys say about me, my Lord Jesus Christ, he's going to be
with a dominant win over the Cardinals
last night. He will not leave me nor forsake me.
How can I? Okay.